A reading from John chapter 18, verses 1 to 14. When Jesus had finished praying, he left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side there was a garden, and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who had betrayed him, knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it that you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who is the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people. On the 13th of February this year, I was invited to lead a simple communion service for the Morgan home group. Within a very short time, 3 outstanding men had died who belonged to that group: Garth Richards, Ed Morgan, and Eric Bateman. And the most significant thing that we could do was to celebrate communion together and to pray together. And as we did that, we were reminded of the cross. We looked back and we gave thanks for 3 lives lived in faith for the love of God. We thank God for them despite the sadness. We sensed, as we thought about the cross, the very presence of Jesus with us. And we also were somehow aware of the cloud of witnesses looking on, encouraging us to go forward. And then we looked forward to the great resurrection day, the day when we will be raised from the dead, united with those who've gone before us in God's new creation. But our focus was on the cross. Now, John opens his gospel with a prologue. And the climax of the prologue comes in verse 14. "The Word became flesh and made his home among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son." Paradoxically, the glory of God revealed in Jesus is seen on the cross. That's the place where we discover the glory of God. The glory of God's great love for each one of us. So we're going to focus now on the arrest of Jesus. John, interestingly enough, doesn't focus on the horrors of the cross. He wants us to understand the meaning of the cross. And the meaning is in the way that John tells the story. Verse 1. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side, there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. The story of Adam and Eve in the garden in Genesis 2 and 3 stands behind the garden of betrayal in this chapter. Just think of a cool evening in the garden, and God comes looking for Adam and Eve. He has created them to know him, to love him, to reflect his goodness and love into the world, to reflect the praises of creation back to God. This was where they always met. This was where he was at home with them. But they were hiding, and there was a bad taste in the air. Something had happened. The friendship was soured. They were hiding. And it was made worse by the excuses and the feeble stories that followed. Love, the most fragile and beautiful of the plants, had been trampled on. It would take a long, long time to grow again. The garden reminds us that God has created us in love, created us to know him, to love him, to reflect his grace and goodness and forgiveness into the world. But they had trampled on the most precious gift of all, the love of God. And that's what we all do, trample on the love of God. John's Gospel is a kind of new Genesis. This is the beginning of the new creation. Verse 2. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. The roles are reversed. Instead of God coming to look for Adam and Eve in the garden, sinful men, violent men, men with weapons, come to the garden looking for someone. That someone was the Father's only Son. Like all humans, they are looking for God, but they don't know what they are doing. They think that they are doing their job, but evil is at work in all of them. In Judas, one of the disciples that Jesus chose, in the Jewish leaders who claim to know and represent the one true God, in the detachment of soldiers who represented an authority delegated by God, a brutal regime. Jesus had wrestled with the evil one from the very time of testing in the wilderness. And now all the forces of evil are gathering together to seek to destroy Jesus, to do away with him once and for all. In John 17, Jesus had prayed for his followers to be protected from the evil one. He taught his followers to pray, "Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil." Jesus had a unique vocation. He would go alone into this whirlpool of evil. He was not protected. "Let this cup pass from me, but not my will. Yours be done." Jesus took upon himself all the powers of evil. Yes, the sin of the world, but the powers of evil at work in the world. And he died the death of a criminal on a cross. You know, evangelical Christians have normally focused on Jesus bearing our sin on the cross, which of course is central to our understanding of the cross. But the wider understanding is actually that all the evil of the world came upon Jesus on the cross. All the powers of evil that we see at work in our cross, in our world. Verse 3. So Judas came to the garden guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches and lanterns and weapons. They came in the dark looking for someone who is the light of the world. Jesus doesn't hide. He's got no reason to do that. the Father had given him a cup to drink from. The agony of the garden, so movingly pictured in Matthew and Mark, and most of all in Luke, is missing from John. But John wants us to understand the meaning of the cross. In fact, John has made it clear that Jesus was very troubled as he went to the cross. One example is chapter 12, verse 27. Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason that I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. The glory of God revealed on the cross. But the moment has now passed. Jesus is ready. The new Adam steps forward to meet the old. The light of the world stands before those who come in the darkness. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not extinguish it. Verse 4. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Jesus' answer to their question is simple and shocking. And in the background, John wants us to hear echoes of the great I am. I am who I am. Remember God appearing to Moses. I am who I am. And of course, the vulnerable man standing before them is the one who, from all eternity, was equal with God. He is the I am. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And the arresting party stumbled backwards and fell to the ground. This, of course, is what people do when they come face to face with God. They fell to the ground. Just imagine Judas in that moment. The chief priests and the Pharisees and Judas himself. And then verse 7. Again he asked them, "Who is it that you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words Jesus had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." Jesus, at this moment of his arrest, is actually caring for his disciples. In chapter 13, you'll remember how he washed their feet. In chapter 14 and 15, he prepared them in his farewell discourse for what was going to happen. In chapter 17, he prayed for them that they'll be protected. "Let these men go," said Jesus. Jesus saves us from going to the cross, and he goes alone to bear the sin and the evil of the world. Verse 10. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. And Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Peter, it seems, is thinking of some kind of military victory. His actions are really thoughtless in the light of Jesus' intentions in chapters 13 to 17. Bloodshed is the sign of human failure. Think of all the bloodshed in our world today. It is the sign of our failure. Jesus is calm. He's in command of his followers, and he's in command of those who've come to arrest him. He is going to the cross. Verse 12. Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who is the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people. The whole scene is heavy with irony. Jesus, the true high priest, has just completed the high priestly prayer in chapter 17. He's taken before Annas, a senior member of the high priestly family, with his son-in-law Caiaphas, who is the present high priest. John reminds us what Caiaphas had said in chapter 11. It would be good if one man died for the people. What an amazing prophecy. Good if one man died for the people. We know what will happen. The true high priest will be sent to death by the false one, so that through his death, God will rescue his people. He will rescue all those who respond to him. The true Adam will be sent to death by the false ones, so that the garden will be restored. Instead of bloodshed, there'll be healing and forgiveness. The Word, who was and is God, is led away for questioning by God's official representative. Now we're going to sing. I've forgotten the name of the song, but we'll stand and sing.